Good morning, traders and investors. Steve Gans here. It is September 7th, 2025, and time to get into the weekend update. So the first thing I want to look at is SPX, and as I had previously drawn this line on here, SPX has stayed really true to that line so far. It did dip a little bit below it here earlier this week on the open, but by the close, it was back inside that line. So we are still in a pretty firm uptrending channel here. We can also notice that this is forming a wedge pattern. We're going to take a look at gold in a little minute, and we're going to see what wedge patterns can often result in. But anyhow, we are continuing higher here on SPX. Volume has largely been good on up days. We did have this closing day on Friday where volume was just a little bit higher on a down day. But while it was a down day, it wasn't necessarily a lower day. It was a down day because it opened at all new highs, sold off a little bit during the day. So I don't pay as much credence to that taller red bar for volume. Now we look at SPY. Of course, it's going to have virtually the same picture. I didn't draw the whole trend line on here, but of course, it's going to be virtually exactly the same as SPX. The ES, or the S&P futures, same thing pretty much. Again, the thing to note here is that we are working on this wedge pattern. So we look at volatility there. Volatility is back down to pretty much all-time lows. So there's no real fear in our markets at this time. Nobody's buying insurance on their portfolios. We take a look at the Qs. The Qs continue to be strong, but they aren't hitting new highs like the S&P is, at least not right at this moment. I suspect that's likely to change here in the next week or two. I'm largely neutral to bullish. Obviously, there's some big reports coming up. There's also a Fed decision coming up. All of that is going to play into this over the next week or two. But overall, I'm neutral to the bullish side on SPY, or the S&P 500. The Qs, same thing, volatility, almost back to all-time recent lows, so no fear happening there. We take a look at IWM. Now, here's what's interesting about IWM. It is popping to new recent highs. Our volume on those up days has been good, but let's just go back in time here a little bit. IWM hasn't come near past highs that were back here in early 2025. And then if we go back even further, we can see that we haven't broken new highs all the way back since 2021. So 2021 was the all-time highs for IWM. That said, it is creeping back there. It is showing more and more strength in recent weeks. So I am pretty bullish on IWM as well. Oh, I should say volatility on IWM also pretty much at all-time recent lows too. So no fear there either. Now let's take a look at GLD. Now you remember last week I pointed out this wedge pattern that was forming in GLD. And in fact, I even suggested a trade concept, trade idea that revolved around this and around the bullish nature of GLD. That trade, in this case, was buying a call spread, a bull call spread. That call spread is essentially at full profit right now of 255, or close to it. It's actually 240 out of a possible 255. So if this were a live trade of mine, I would certainly be closing it at this point. There's virtually nothing else to be gained. But as with everything, I recommend these as paper trades. Now, I did not actually have time to research one for this week. I'm traveling this week, but I'll try to come back with a suggested trade concept idea for next week. But obviously, this one from last week on the GLD worked out extremely well. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the weekend update here for September 7th, 2025. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by. All right, so those of you that are interested in seeing how the alert service trades are going, and if you're interested in the alert service, I'll put a link on the screen down below for you. This is a service where I share the trades that I am making Specifically, most of my trades right now have been a newer trade that I have developed. That trade is called the Flyagonal. So what's really interesting about the Flyagonal is it's a combination of a broken wing butterfly and a diagonal that has some pretty large theta decay happening in it. And these trades tend to last shorter amounts of time, anywhere from 3 days to maybe 6 or 7 days, somewhere in that general range. They tend to have some pretty decent returns. In this case, it was about 17% in that 6-day period of time. These are traded in relatively small size, usually around $2,500 in risk or so per trade. And again, I do probably 1 to 2 of them a week in some cases. And this is the most recent one that closed. Prior to this, last week I had closed 4 others, similar in nature, all nicely profitable trades. There are also a number of them that are still open in the alert service. So this is a regular butterfly trade that's up about $120. This is a Flyagonal trade that's been open 4 days at this stage, up about 6%. I'm expecting that this one will probably close on Monday if we stay in a general range here. This blue marker here tells me there's an order out there on that right now to close that trade. This is one that was literally just opened on Friday, so brand new Flyagonal trade that was open. And if our market stays in a general 100 or so point range, either direction here, this is on the Qs, this particular one, so I said 100. Actually, it's not going to be 100 in the Qs. It's going to be about a 10 to 20 point range. But if it stays in that general 10 to 20 point range for a few days, this should come off for a nice profit as well. And then I have the wheel trade that I'm also doing in the class, teaching people how to trade the wheel strategy in PayPal. That one continues to be up nicely at about $124. So that's what's been happening in the alert service. Again, if that's of interest to you, I'll put a link in the description down below to be sure to check it out. So thanks so much, everyone, for stopping by here for the weekend update on September 7th, 2025. If you find this information to be of interest, please give me a thumbs up, I'll subscribe. Thanks so much, everyone, and take care.